Hey, Shelly.
Hi everyone, welcome to Oregon Zoo Live. I'm Shelly and I'm one of the aquarists here at the Oregon Zoo, which means I get the privilege of taking care of the fish. And today I'm going to introduce you to my favorite fish here at the zoo, Blanche the wolf eel. I'm really excited to answer your questions and show you just a glimpse of some of what it takes to take care of the fish here at the zoo. And before we get going, I just want to thank everyone for your support. All your donations, your kind words, watching our videos, sharing our videos. We really couldn't do it without you, and we're really excited to get open back up and let our guests back in. But until then, if you can and are willing, you can donate right now to the zoo right here on this post. So what we're going to do today is we're going to feed our wolf eel Blanche. I've enlisted the help of some of my co-workers who are going to be scuba diving. And before we get started and while you get your questions going, I'm going to get the divers down in the water and we're going to get started, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions about the exhibit, Blanche, or anything that you see inside. Fish to Zach, send the divers down.
Copy that, sending diver.
So, Shelly, Braylon's asking, what do wolf eels eat? What will we be trying to feed Blanche today?
So wolf eels actually eat a variety of food. They have big molars in the back, so they can eat things like crabs, urchins, shrimp, different crustaceans. Our wolf eel loves to eat clam, so that's what we're going to offer today because it's his favorite food. Right there, that's Micah. He's one of our divers and going to help us out today. Sometimes it takes Blanche a minute to get prepared or want to eat, or also possibly because we're live, he might be giving us a hard time today. Oh, here he comes. I see his face. That's where he normally hangs out. That's his hidey hole in his tube.
So I missed who asked this, but somebody asked, why do they call him a wolf eel?
I think it's because they have the appearance of an eel. They have that long, slender body just like eels do, but the way that you can tell Blanche is actually a fish is by those pectoral fins, those cute little pectoral fins behind his head. So that's what actually makes Blanche a fish.
Karen's asking, where do wolf eels live?
So wolf eels live right here in Oregon. They also live all the way from Southern California, all the way up the Pacific, through Alaska and the Sea of Japan.
So Ronan and a couple other folks are asking, is Blanche an electric eel?
Blanche is not an electric eel. Electric eels are actually found in fresh water. This is our kelp exhibit, which is a cold marine tank, so salt water. And all of the fish that you see here are actually native here to Oregon.
So Mia's asking, how long is Blanche?
So wolf eels can actually get up to 8 feet and weigh about 40 pounds. Our guess is Blanche is close to 6 or 7 feet long and probably weighing close to 30, 40 pounds.
Zach is asking, do they live with the otters? Some folks might have seen an otter back there.
They don't live with the otters. There's actually a nice thick piece of acrylic that separates the otter exhibit from the fish exhibit, but everyone does have the opportunity to look at each other when they're in the windows.
So can you tell us a little bit about what these pink rings are?
Sure. So we do a lot of diving, and sometimes it doesn't always mean feeding. Sometimes our divers go in to clean the exhibit, to scrub, clean the windows, and we want Blanche to know when the divers are there for him. So the pink ring is actually his target, and that lets him know that the divers are here for him and to feed him.
So Melanie's asking, how did Blanche get his name?
Oh, I was waiting for that. That's my favorite story. So we got Blanche 4 years ago. When we got Blanche, he was labeled as a female. And a funny story, when we first brought him in, Sarah, in fact, one of our divers, made a joke that said that, oh, she looks like Blanche from the Golden Girls, and the name sort of stuck. As Blanche got older, we realized that, in fact, he was a he and not a she. I tried to change the name, but no one would have it, so he will always be forever Blanche.
So Adriana is asking, how many babies does a wolf eel have?
Wolf eels can actually lay up to 1,000 eggs at a time. The males and females will den together, and a lot of times they stay together for life. So anywhere up to 1,000, depending on how many survive. It's probably not going to be that many due to predation and things like that. So that's why they lay so many at one time.
So Angela's asking, what's stuck on the tank over here? Michael, you want to take a look at this?
Oh, that's fun, right? So in addition to fish, we also have some sea anemones in our exhibit. And a lot of people don't know this, but sea anemones are animals and they can actually move. So this guy's been on the glass now for about 3 months. And every day I come in, he's a little bit farther, a little bit higher, and he just kind of continues to move around the exhibit. And when our divers are done, they're also going to feed the anemones. So, oh, here he comes. Blanche is going at it again.
So George wants to know, how smart is a wolf eel?
I think it's one of those things where people take for granted that fish actually are pretty smart. They're pretty intelligent. It didn't take us very long to teach Blanche how to do the target feeding. And it's one of those things where there's a lot of aquarists doing a lot of training and enrichment with fish, just like we do with mammals. So hopefully we can move this along and teach Blanche to do other things, especially to help with medical procedures, catching him if we need to look at him, and also just making really fun shows for you guys when you come back to visit.
We had a question about how long wolf eels live for.
So they can live up to 25 years. Blanche is about 5, so I expect that we're going to have him for a very long time. And like a lot of animals, when they're in captivity and they're well taken care of and they have constant vet care and husbandry support, they can probably live a little bit longer than 25 years.
Sage is asking if wolf eel would harm humans.
Good question, Sage. They look a little fierce and they look a little rough, I know, but actually there's a lot of stories of scuba divers out in the wild who come across wolf eels and always say that they're very curious, they're friendly creatures, so they may look that way, but they're actually very nice. Blanche has never had any problems and he's never had any negative interactions with the divers before.
So Layla's asking how much Blanche eats, and for the folks who are just tuning in, can you tell us what Blanche eats?
Right, so Blanche right now is eating clam. It is his favorite food. We try to offer him other types of food like shrimp, capelin, herring, all that other stuff that we feed like our sea otters and our seals. He's very partial to clam. So about once a week, sometimes twice, we get in and we offer him about 500 grams. And we let him eat till he's full. And sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes it takes 45. It just depends on how hungry he really is.
Oliver's asking what a wolf eel's predators are.
Good question, Oliver. So when wolf eels are adults, their main predators are sharks and harbor seals, believe it or not. When they're younger and smaller and more free swimming in the open ocean, they have to worry about larger fish eating them.
Carolyn's asking if wolf eels like to play.
Good question, Carolyn. I don't necessarily know if they like to play, but I do believe that Blanche enjoys his time with the divers. I believe that he enjoys his target feeding, and he's definitely does like to interact sometimes with the otters on the other side of the glass.
Maya's asking, what's the difference between an eel and a fish?
Excellent question. So eels can be considered fish. However, they don't have the pectoral fins, and they have actually a different gill construction. And so, like Blanche is a wolf fish, technically, but he's called a wolf eel, and it's mostly just to confuse you guys.
Beckett and Lucas are asking if there are any other wolf eels in here.
There are no other wolf eels. We have talked before about getting a female. But for right now, we've had such a good success with Blanche. He's our first wolf eel that we've kept in our kelp habitat. So currently, we're just kind of focused on him, but that doesn't mean that we won't get another one in the future.
So July, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is asking, how do they reproduce?
So males and females will get together. They'll find a den. They'll live in the den, and females will actually lay eggs, and then the males will fertilize, and they will take turns protecting those eggs while the other one hunts and eats, sometimes kind of like the way that birds do.
The Bear, who missed this earlier, is asking, how long can they grow?
So an adult wolf eel can be up to 8 feet and weigh 40 pounds. I would say Blanche is pretty close to that. He's definitely over 6 feet and will probably weigh about 30 pounds right now.
And Jimmy's asking how long before Blanche gets full size, or how long does it take for a wolf eel to get
right?
full size?
I imagine that he doesn't have too much more growing to do. We've had him 4 years, and he was probably close to a year when we got him. So if he's 5 years now and almost at that 8 feet length, I would say in another year or two, Blanche will be full grown.
So Michael, let's go over here and check out what Sarah's doing.
So right now, the divers are now feeding the anemones, Believe it or not, anemones are animals and they are carnivores. Because we don't have a lot of food floating around in the tank, the divers also have to go in and feed our anemones. So they're getting things like capelin, shrimp, any of the clam that Blanche didn't eat. And we do this every time we feed Blanche. We also feed our anemones.
Otis is asking, how big do these anemones get?
So they're pretty large. If you look at that one that Micah just fed, who just closed up on the food, I would say that's our biggest one. They will continue to grow. So I would say that anemone down there is probably at least a foot across, if not bigger.
So I missed who asked the question, but they're asking if wolf eels ever eat other fish.
They can. They definitely can. So what'll happen is a wolf eel, they're not big migrators. They don't swim around in the ocean like fish. When they're adults, they find a nice cave or den or rocky cliff to live in, and they sort of just poke their head out and wait for food to either walk or swim by. And sometimes if that happens to be a fish, then they're definitely going to eat a fish.
Rosie's asking how often they get fed.
So Blanche gets fed every week. Blanche gets fed every week, and we would try to feed him more often, but we can't figure out if he's just too shy or maybe kind of lazy and doesn't want to swim the 23 feet it takes to get to the top of the surface. He knows that we'll bring food to him, so I think he takes advantage of that.
So Luca's asking, how do they sleep?
How do they sleep? So fish don't sleep the way that mammals do, like you do. They actually do more of a rest. They don't really close their eyes, but instead they'll just sort of find a place, like Blanche, for example, in his tube. Blanche will lay there and he'll kind of shut part of his brain down so he can just rest. It's not sleeping per se.
So can you tell us again, for the folks tuning in here, who do we have in the water here? Who's helping out today?
So our diver right here to the left, this is Sarah, and the diver to the right, that's Micah. When you work with aquatic animals, fish, even the sea otters, seals, part of our job is to do scuba diving on a regular basis. It's a big part of our job. We have to get in the water to feed our animals, clean the exhibits, make sure that you have nice clean windows for our guests when they come to see us. Sometimes we have to make repairs to things underwater, so scuba diving is actually a big part.
Kristen is asking, do eels have ears and a nose?
They don't have ears. They don't really have a nose, but they do have a great sense of smell. So Blanche can smell his food just like he can see the ring. It's all part of their cue. And they really, they feel sound vibrations more than they hear it. So I guess it's not really your ears that are doing that.
Alice is asking, how many fish are in here?
Great question. So in this tank, we have about 30 fish. We have about 30 anemones also, and altogether 20 different species.
So we'll take one last question here, Shelley. How can people help wolf eels and other creatures that live off our coast?
That's my favorite question to answer. So the best thing you can do is try to keep your oceans healthy. So recycle your plastic. Make sure you're being careful about what you're putting down the drain. And my favorite part is make sure, if you like to eat seafood, that you're making sure you're eating sustainable seafood. And healthy oceans are actually the most important part, and all of that will be good.
All right, well,
all right,
thanks
everyone.
so much.
Yeah, let's say bye to our divers. Thanks, you guys, for joining us today. We had a great time. We look forward to seeing you next time. Please feel free to use the link in the comments and show us pictures of your activities. You can tag us or hashtag Oregon Zoo. And until next time, bye, and bye to Blanche, and bye to our divers.
Thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Blanche.